Let's start by taking a look at the Premier League table, with the Premier League returning at the weekend and coming back with a bang as well. Manchester City taking on Arsenal on Sunday. The two teams separated by a single point. Arsenal in first, level on points with Liverpool, but with a better goal difference, and City just a point behind them with 10 rounds left to play. Is this the decisive weekend in the Premier League title race? Let's welcome in our guests then. Frank and James, both with us. Great to have you with us, guys. Craig, let me start with you, though. It looks as though Pep Guardiola is going to have some shuffling to do at the back there. It doesn't look as though John Stones is going to make it. And as for Kyle Walker, he looks 50-50 right now. Yeah, so they have the players, of course, well, they've got a good squad to come in if you've looked at the bench in recent games. You know, Ake, Akanji, Guardiola. You know, Guardiola's been cut out in some games, particularly playing at left back, so we'll see what scenario happens there. Obviously, you know, Stones and Walker. Stones, when he's fit, has been huge for him stepping into the midfield. Akanji's tried to do that, hasn't worked as well as Stones. And of course, Kyle Walker, you know, is still one of the best defenders in European football, primarily because he's so quick. So it's a blow, but that's what international football can throw up. You know, these international friendlies, they come along, manager sits at home, watching and praying that the squad's going to come back fit, and inevitably, you know, there's always one or two knocks. So I don't think they'll use it as an excuse if those players are not fit. This is a big game, huge game. Arsenal beat them at the Emirates, and last time out against the other team in the title race, they were outplayed against Liverpool, and were very lucky to come away with a point. Should have been beaten. So in some sense, City have to try and put a marker down here because, as I say, they've not played particularly well against these teams, against Arsenal, and against Liverpool. And this is an Arsenal side that, OK, we've had this international break, but this is an Arsenal side, Porto apart, have just been destroying teams in the Premier League. Now, City are a different kettle of fish, but unless something's triggered a downturn in this international period, Arsenal have been the informed team going into that international break. So is this defensive issue at the back for Man City being something that's highlighted back home, James?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does feel as though if there is a momentum that can be created off an international break when obviously the teams aren't playing, it does feel like it's been with Arsenal. Obviously, Bukayo Saka pulled out of the England friendlies quite early on. Ben White refused the call-up. And if you even look at the England-Belgium game at Wembley on Tuesday, Jeremy Doku played 90 minutes. Leandro Trossard came off after half an hour. Obviously, Phil Foden and Declan Rice played the 90 minutes, but you suspect that those two are in such good individual form, and Declan Rice in particular is so sort of naturally fit that I don't think that would affect his preparation for Sunday's game too much. It just feels as though, then you look at further afield, Saliba didn't play too much for France. It just feels as though Arsenal have had a better international break in terms of getting some rest into those players. And if you think about where Arsenal were a year ago when they played this fixture, they just started to wobble already going into the game at the Etihad. They were missing William Saliba. There was a massive, massive loss for them at centre-half. And you just sort of feel as though there's a lot more solidity and positivity around the team at the moment. They're in a much better place to go to the Etihad and try and produce their best performance this time around. But it's really the ultimate test of whether they can do it or not. And as Craig says, they've been beating teams left, right and centre at the moment. They've not been beating very much. This is arguably the biggest test in Europe, to go away to City and try and win.
Obviously, James just brought up there what happened after the March international break last time around for Arsenal, when it all went to pot, really. Remember those three back-to-back draws against Liverpool, West Ham and Southampton? Yeah, but you had the likes, I think, if memory serves me right, you had the likes of Rob Holding and that coming in. So is it different this time around, like James is saying? Well, it certainly feels different. And you know, you look at the approach that Arsenal may take, right? If you take Liverpool's performance, albeit at home, as a blueprint of how to ruffle the feathers of this City side, it was to get in their face, it was to press high, it was to not give the Rodris and the Fodens and all these guys time on the ball. And you saw Guardiola got the bench for Kovacic because he needed an extra man in midfield. That's normally the opposition that are doing that. And Arsenal this season, for me, have been the best team pressing, particularly at home. But they've been the best team at pinning other opposition sides in their own half and not letting them out and squeezing them.
Now, that's okay doing that to Wolves and Brentford and all these teams, but can they go to the Etihad, and is that the approach they're going to take? They're capable of doing it, and City have flaws. Liverpool showed that. But what's the mindset of Arsenal? Is it a little bit cautious, or do they go there, they press them, they go toe-to-toe, and they say, no, this is 12 months on, we're a better side, and we're not going to sit back? I certainly hope that is the approach, because I think they're good enough to do that.
I don't think Arsenal changed anything about who they are. Coming into this international break, I said I thought Arsenal were playing the best football in the league. And had things been different, had things been turned on its head, in that City were the ones sitting top of the table, City were the ones that everybody was saying are playing the best football in the league, we'd be carving their name on the trophy right now. I think there's still that little bit of uncertainty around Arsenal, because how do you cope with the break of momentum? It's great playing wonderful football from January through March, and then all of a sudden you have this break. And to James's point, even though your players don't get that many minutes during the international break, you don't have that many injuries to worry about, how do you cope with the break in momentum? And that remains the uncertainty around Arsenal. Can they cope with all the different quirks around the last 2 or 3 months of the season? Can they cope with the pressure that comes in the last 2 or 3 months of the season? We know City can, we know Liverpool can, and which is why we kind of still feeling that they are our favourite here. Again, but Arsenal, without question, this is theirs to lose at this point.
How do you see Arsenal this time around, Frank?
Well, I see them better than last season. I see them more prepared than last season. And I see them, and Shaka alluded a little bit that during his comment, they are psychologically more prepared. But now, are they going to engage psychologically the game the way they should? That I don't know. I don't have the answer. I mean, you play at the Etihad against Manchester City. You know that something special is going to happen, and the pressure is going to be huge. Everybody is waiting to see how improved the Gunners are. And I'm not sure in that game that I can say that's for sure. They're going to play that game and they're going to be prepared. I think the psychological aspect of the game is going to be crucial, and we're going to see how they feel fighting at the Etihad against the best team in Europe, which is the team we still consider the best team in Europe. That we'll have the answer. Don't forget that Arteta also comes back to Etihad. He was assistant coach of Guardiola. Some players like Gabriel Jesus, come from Manchester City as well. And they have all question marks that Arsenal player and the coach can wonder and don't having answers. And when you wonder, you question yourself, and psychologically you're not 100% prepared.
I think he realised, Arteta, that Kai Havertz has been a big topic, right? Mm-hmm. He's not been the only one, but he's been a huge topic. Why? Where's he going to play? The price tag, his form at Chelsea, blah, blah, blah. And this sort of plan of playing him in the midfield, let's be honest, it hasn't really worked. Now, you can play Havertz in the midfield as the three against, the weaker teams, but I think Arteta has... And by the way, Havertz has done OK now that he's gone up front and played as a sort of number 9 or false 9, and, he's not a natural scorer, but he's got some physicality, and he can link up, and he'll run the channel and creates a little bit of space. But I think Arteta realised against the bigger teams he needs to get an extra midfielder in there, i.e. Jorginho. And that is a better balance for me in the midfield, because it allows Rice to do a little bit more going forward and not have to worry as much defensively, and I think it helps Martin Odegaard. That, in essence, helps Martin Odegaard as well. So I think the Arteta Havertz scenario and where you play him in big games, Champions League, Liverpool, Man City, has well and truly been answered. And I think the fact that he's had a struggle in the front department with Jesus and Nketiah, and he's needed somebody to go up there, has helped that as well. But the fact that he gets somebody in there with just to give Declan Rice a little bit of help, I think in these bigger games has made the world of difference.
Yeah, sticking on that Kai Havertz point then, James, do you think Arteta's taken this player to the next level?
Yeah, well, I think he's got more consistency out of him of late. I mean, this is a player who scored the winner in the Champions League final for Chelsea, and he had his moments in a Chelsea shirt. But it's funny actually when you go to Stamford Bridge and you hear kind of people talking about Arsenal, and you sort of say, oh, the Arsenal fans like him this week, but they might not like him next week, because that's what they were used to at Chelsea. One week he could deliver, the next week he couldn't. He was always quite inconsistent in front of goal, but there would be times when he would be, he would link the play up very well. And I think he was someone who struggled in that ambiguity of his positioning and the lack of clear messaging that he got from Graham Potter and then from Frank Lampard at Chelsea. I think he's revelling in just how precise and meticulous Mikel Arteta is in the role that he wants him to play in that team. And Craig's right. Him playing further forward gives Jorginho the chance to come in and then create that better balance with Rice. But also when you've got Havertz playing as a 9, every manager I've ever talked to about Kai Havertz always talks about how good he is without the ball and his pressing and how intelligent he is in helping, team shape and being able to close teams down and win the ball back high up the pitch. That will be quite important, I think, for Arsenal at the Etihad. And that is something that he really gives a team that you can't necessarily quantify, and the stats you've just shown with obviously the goals and assists and kind of thing. But I think we need to reference that game last season in terms of it was men against boys. It was City asserting their dominance. They won that game really quite handsomely. They bullied Arsenal that day, and it was De Bruyne going longer to Erling Haaland. It was really, Arsenal centre-backs without Saliba not being able to cope with Haaland's physicality. And really Arsenal wilted that day. And I think what Arteta wants to see from this team and believes he has in this team now is more resilience, more robustness, an ability to be able to stand up and show character in face of that pressure. Because we know that City come good at this part of the season. This is the time they turn it on. They've done it year after year under Guardiola, and we kind of expect them to do it again. What we don't know about Arsenal is whether they can do it in these final 10 games, because they didn't last season. They've bought players like Havertz, like Rice, who've got that big game experience, who should be able to deliver under the maximum pressure. And really, Sunday, we're going to find out whether Arteta's judgment is right and these players can make the difference between a team that could win the league and maybe will win the league.
All right, let's take a look then at the predictions. We're actually going to put Frank and Shaka's on ice right now. Okay, not your prediction, Frank. What do you want to say?
Oh, yeah. Well, the prediction, I still go
no prediction from you. No prediction from you.
Not yet.
Oh, sorry.
You're back on Saturday. We're going to make the viewers wait.
Okay. I just want to say something about Kai Havertz. I'm very sorry, Kai. Kai Havertz, every year that he played for Chelsea, switched on at a certain point. You don't know why and how and what happened. Last year, for example, from December to February, he was simply outstanding, the best player of Chelsea. But the problem with him is you don't know when he's going to switch on and when he's going to switch off. That's the problem. But what he does right now with Arsenal and also with the Mannschaft, because I saw him playing against France, the guy is outstanding. But you don't know what's going to happen on Sunday. He can switch off and have a bad end of the season like he had for Chelsea. But that's him. Great player. It's only to be fair to say that he has at some point a good period. It's not really nice to say it, but it's what it is, and it's who he is. Right now, the inconsistency that of Chelsea fans we're talking about, it happens every year, and we can see that with Arsenal, it still happens.
It's not easy because moving on slightly from Havertz in a bit, but it's not easy coming in with that price tag, not in the greatest form, knowing that you go into a rival, huge rival, whether Chelsea are not rivals at the moment, but you're going to a London rival who are going for the title, going for all these major trophies, and you know the eyes are on you from the Arsenal fans. You know everyone's asking the same question: why? And players soak that in. And when you have a bad touch or make a bad pass or miss a so-called easy chance, it sort of weighs on players. So I think he's actually come through it thus far pretty well. I think Arteta's doing him a big favour by putting him in the front three. He can operate in the front three. He's done it for Germany, he did it for Chelsea. And when he was a young kid superstar, as he was in Germany, he was doing it regular for Leverkusen. But getting shuffled from pillar to post hasn't helped him. So I think he's more natural in that position. And I actually think he's handled the pressure albeit sometimes when he's having an average game, you kind of see the shoulders go down, but that's normal. But I think, bearing in mind all the eyes have been on him, for all those reasons I've mentioned, I think he's actually done pretty well.
OK, what's your prediction for the weekend then?
Oh, by me.
Because I'm just asking you and James, because Shaka and Frank are both back on Saturday, but Frank gave us a little preview.
All right. I am going to go, because I've said all along, I think Arsenal are the strongest team to challenge City, although Liverpool have been great. I'm going to go for Arsenal to put a marker down, a huge one, away from home, and get a 1-0 victory.
James?
I mean, Arsenal's record is so bad at the Etihad. that is what worries me. I mean, I can see them getting a point, but I think I'm going to go with the form horse, really, and I'm going to think that, you know, when you think about Haaland and De Bruyne coming out from international duty, resting up, City click into gear at this time, I think it's going to be very tight, but I'm going to just go City win, I think.